capital campaign as an organization to be able to acquire this hotel that is the Baymont Inn. The city of Charlotte gave us $2.25 million last year to be able to master lease this building and house families.
Welcome to another episode of Strong Place. I'm Aya Johnson, Executive Director of Mental Health America of Central Carolinas. And thank you for looking at this episode. We need your help. We are trying to get the word out about reducing stigma around talking about our mental health. So please share this episode with a friend and also subscribe to our YouTube channel. It does not cost you anything, but it does help us achieve our mission and get the word out. Also, give us a thumbs up and hit that like button and turn on your notifications so you know when new episodes are dropping. So thank you again. And today I have the distinct honor of chatting and talking with the Greg Jackson. Greg was a rapper and a sous chef when the September protests began. And we are filming in Charlotte, so we're talking about Charlotte. He showed up with others to protest the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department at its headquarters the day after the shooting. But a crucial conversation that day changed his trajectory. After creating his nonprofit, Heal Charlotte, he partnered with CMPD to train officers how to communicate with the community in volatile situations, and has created an after-school camp for at-risk youth in his Northeast Charlotte neighborhood. But that only scratches the surface, which you'll soon hear from Greg himself about all the wonderful work that he's doing. So thank you, Greg, and welcome to Strong Place.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so that's just a little blurb that I found on LinkedIn, but I know that you have a lot more going on. So tell me, fill in the blanks for me of what I didn't read that you have going on, and tell everybody about Heal Charlotte.
Well, for me, I'm a father of three girls, 19, 14, and 8. So all of the viewers need to pray for me. And
You just we hear the money come draining out your pockets as you're talking.
yeah, this all theirs. They control everything.
Right.
And I'm a rapper turned nonprofit. I guess rapper turned protester to activist to social entrepreneur, and just doing anything that I can do to put some positivity inside of the community. Yeah.
You're being humble. You're definitely being humble, because I have visited your campus, Heal Charlotte, and tell us about that campus, because it's really impressive. And when you and I met, you were telling me about how you were doing housing. And I was like, I need to pick your brain. I want to ask. I have so many questions. I want to get into housing with MHA, and so talk about that Heal Charlotte campus, because it's very impressive what you're doing.
Yeah, definitely can't take credit for it. It's a vision that was given from God that said I was gonna take over a hotel, and I thought that was absolutely crazy. In 2018, did a story with Michael Graff at the Charlotte Agenda, and basically was screaming and advocating for the invisible community that I serve, which are families that are staying inside of hotels, families that are experiencing homelessness, whether they're from the transient community or they're chronically homeless, and said we needed to take over already established buildings like hotels and put a low rate on them and help families that are in transition. And we're here 2024, 6 years later. We have a $10 million capital campaign as an organization to be able to acquire this hotel that is the Baymont Inn. The city of Charlotte gave us $2.25 million last year to be able to master lease this building and house families that are experiencing homelessness. I'm a big advocate of us having equity in the community that we serve in, owning buildings and land in the community we serve in, and not just being so programmatic. So it's a systemic change that, I hope, stands the test of time. And we have Heal Charlotte campuses around this country. But it's our way of bridging the divide, of bridging the gap between this high supply of low income housing and luxury apartments that are here in Charlotte. There are families that are getting pushed out, and there are new families that are coming in, and everybody's in transition. And the families that we're helping, they get after school programming. The moms and the dads get to be reunited because they're divided by the shelter system. There's nowhere that a dad can really go with his kids. There's nowhere that a husband and wife can go with their family. They're usually split up. It takes a unique organization to be able to serve them. So we're just, buying our block back and, working in the community and giving all of the love that we possibly can. But we want to be space providers before we're service providers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. You mentioned transient versus chronically homeless. Can you just explain to us what that is? Because everybody doesn't know. And I went to some symposium one day, and there's a lot of opinions about transitional housing.
Yeah.
So tell us, like, what's the difference between needing transitional housing versus that chronic homelessness?
Yeah. So and I want to address transitional because I'm starting to rename it as pivotal,
Mm-hmm.
because of the stigma that's on transitional housing and
Mm-hmm.
how people are looked at that's going through that transition. But I serve a lot of families in the transient community that are staying in hotels that can't afford to stay in apartments or might have a background that stops them from getting into an apartment. And the only thing that is really available for them is a hotel. These are working families. These are working single moms. These
Mm-hmm.
are working single dads. That have aspirations to be able to have upward mobility in this city, right? And they've fallen in the gap
Mm-hmm.
and they're invisible, right? And most people do not know that they exist, right? But they're contributors to this society. They're contributors to the economics behind this city, and they need to be valued and seen as such. And then we have families that are chronically homeless that don't have a lot to give right now, and they need to be helped out a little more intensely, right?
Mm-hmm.
They need a lot of wraparound services. They might not have their IDs. They might be sleeping in tents outside on the street on benches. That's your chronically homeless that have nowhere to go, absolutely like nowhere at all. And you might see them in shelters, emergency housing. So it is not everybody fits in the same. It's all not all one bucket, right?
Mm-hmm.
People that are experiencing homelessness, it's tiers and levels to where they are in their transition. So we serve the transient community, and we do our best to serve the chronically homeless. But it is definitely a population that people need to understand. There are different personalities and characteristics that are in all of these families, and they don't fit in one bucket at all.
I think when I asked you about how you got into housing, and you were telling me about the after school program, I believe,
Yeah.
and wanting to help, the children and their families that are in there. And one of the things that we know, like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, like there's some basic stuff that we need to be able to
Yeah.
help families with and help just community citizens with before we can get to even the bigger things. So I used to also run an after school program, and I know a lot of times you hear the term wraparound services, and I think that you're you're providing that ultimate wraparound service, which is giving people a place to stay.
Mm-hmm.
If a child comes into your after school program, uh, one of the ways I got into food insecurity is running the after school program, and I had these siblings, brothers, and one of them, they had a younger brother
Mm-hmm.
at home. And the younger of the two brothers that had in the after school program, I remember coming up to me one day and tugging on me. And he wanted me to come down because he didn't want to say it too loud. And he said, if there's any food left over today,
Mm-hmm.
could you give it to me? Because we don't know if we're going to eat dinner tonight. And especially the milk for my little brother, because we
Yeah.
don't always have milk at home. And that wrecked my world.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, like, I sprang into action. I said, okay, there's Teddy Grahams, cheese ball puffs, and, little snack things is
Mm-hmm.
not gonna be enough. I've got to figure it out and do better. And then I started a dinner program at our after school program. We started doing it. We call them like super stacks, just me trying to raise the money through grant writing. And one day I got an email from, I was in New Jersey at the time, from the like, school age child care consortium. And they said, do you want to serve dinner in your after school program? I think I responded like 90 seconds later. And the woman picked up the phone and called me. And she said, I've never seen anybody respond to an email that fast. Tell me about your program. And from there, I started off just like being an ambassador for, an after school program. So there's so much good work
Yeah.
and so many other things that we tap into when you run school age after care. I don't think that people realize that.
Yeah.
Kids come into those programs really hungry. Sometimes they're eating lunch at 11 o'clock in the morning. You have them from 3 to 6.
Yeah.
It's a long stretch of time to not, have another meal.
Yeah. That's why we make sure that the children are included in our, client to case manager ratio.
Mm-hmm.
Because these children come with a boatload of their own issues.
Right.
And you start to learn about their parents through serving the kids.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was my introduction to a lot, is serving kids.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because kids are kind of like that gateway into where we really understand what are going on with families. So tell me about what your personal mental health story is. I know that we have a common background, that we're both native New Yorkers.
Yeah.
So what's your personal mental health story?
Yeah, I'm from the Boogie Down Bronx.
The Boogie Down.
The only borough with a the. And my mental health story is, I am still on the journey. The story is still a story. It's not ended. And I don't think that I had mental health awareness for a little while. Probably, when I got in my 30s is probably when I really started to understand mental health in some type of capacity, or that I've been impacted, by the things that I've gone through in my life. And, I'm still working through, a lot of the stuff that happened in my childhood, just growing up, single parent mom, having a dad that I didn't really know until I got older in my teens, and working through that journey, and then being able to forgive him, and, him getting arrested and doing 10 years. I did a year in jail myself, selling drugs and hustling in New York. So, witnessing so much stuff, and then not really, in the 90s, early 2000s, mental health wasn't really a conversation.
Right.
In communities of color at all, especially in my neighborhood. So my mom is like a big Christian. So everything was like, pray about it. Jesus will do something. I thought she was dating Jesus. The way she was
dating Jesus.
You hear her in the back just screaming Jesus. I'm like, man, this dude's everywhere.
This ain't that kind of show.
Yeah, but it's good though, because it's rooted in who I am now,
right?
And so when I started doing this work, in 2016 was probably where I became aware of all of the things that have impacted me, and by serving the community, I was serving myself in a large capacity. Watching people go through their experiences, and then seeing me in people and saying, oh wow, that happened to me too. Oh wow, I'm dealing with that. How is that affecting my children? How is that affecting my parenting? How does that affect me being a son, a big brother, and led me to get baptized. I ended up getting baptized 5 years ago.
Okay.
Right. And then from there, it's just been a journey. So for me, it started by serving other people.
Right.
Right. I tell people the horizontal part of the cross was where my mental health started.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah.
The horizontal part of the cross.
Yeah, for sure.
When you said the horizontal part of the cross, you talk about basically that latitude thing, that just
that latitude,
reaching
where two or three are gathered, I'm in the midst. That part of experiencing somebody else and being able to put yourself in their shoes and switch places with them, and kind of see their story and your story. And
Mm-hmm.
that's when my empathy started to raise. That's when I started to be able to look at myself and start to work on some things in me, because I started to see, the change that I wanted to see in other people and in the world.
Right.
And then that helped in my mental health journey. And then so my spiritual health is what got me to being mentally healthy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um, but I interviewed a pastor recently, and we were talking about, God gave us mind, body, and spirit.
Yeah.
And he expects us to be stewards over our entire vessel. So not just our physical body, but also our mind.
Yeah.
What I think I hear you saying is that on your way to your spiritual journey and reconnecting with God and accepting Christ is when it highlighted for you that you needed to pay more attention to your mental health?
Well, with my spiritual transformation and transition, there was a renewing of my mind that
Gotcha.
came with me reading the scriptures and with me understanding the gospel.
Yep.
And then me being interacting with, just making disciples and,
Mm-hmm.
having people in my oikos, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, that's what led to that happening.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I know you're a gospel rapper. You have a song out now called Legacy, I think it's
Yeah.
right.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I was watching the video. Really good song,
Thank,
very catchy, like sticks in your mind.
thank you.
Were you a secular rapper and then you switched to gospel, or did you start rapping after you really came into like the fullness of Christ?
No, I was a secular rapper. I had a mixtape with K Slay, DJ K Slay in the Bronx.
Mm-hmm.
And I was doing a lot of music in the streets.
Mm-hmm.
I was living the street life
Mm-hmm.
fully. That's what I was doing, even though I went to school for culinary and I was working in the restaurants as a sous chef. But that was my passion, was making music. Yeah, and then when I started my organization, actually I stopped rapping.
Okay, you
And
stopped rapping when you started Hail
I
Charlotte.
stopped rapping when
Okay.
not by choice, but I was set down, right? God set me down and told me, you're gonna serve. You've been serving through your words. Now you're gonna serve by action. So I started an organization. Shout out to my uncle, who's Grandmaster Caz from the Cold Crush Brothers.
Yeah.
I let him see what I was doing at Hill Charlotte, and we started doing some Stop the Violence work, and I brought him in on that. And he told me one day, he said, "Yo, nephew, this is probably like the most hip hopish thing you've ever done, right?
Really?
As far as serving my community,
Mm-hmm.
and that's just the foundations of hip hop is really to just be news reporters for what's going on in the neighborhood, and then also being a solution at the same time, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I didn't rap for probably, 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then I saw kids in my program leaving with headphones on,
Right.
and I knew what they was listening to.
Mm-hmm.
And, you spend, 3 hours with Coach Greg and 10 hours with, said rapper that's out here in the world rapping about God knows what.
Right.
I get drowned out. You're not listening to me anymore. You might remember 10% of what I said, but as far as the integrity, the passion, and really honing in on your integrity, you might lose that, listening to the opposite of what I'm putting out.
Right.
So yeah, I prayed. I was just praying, like, if just let me use my talents. I promise I'll use them for good.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got access to a studio and music and was able to record. He blessed us with a budget and staff, and I don't have to be
Really?
on the scene all the time.
Right.
I got people that work for me and volunteers.
Mm-hmm.
Was able to sow my gifts.
I think I saw that you lead worship or do something with worship at your church, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
How was it, I guess, presenting? Gospel rap has come a lot more mainstay now. Before,
Yeah,
it really wasn't embraced by the church.
yeah.
How do you feel like your ministry, what you do in the community, your musical talent, how do they intersect for you?
Well, I put a lot of my curriculum in my music, and for me, I can't necessarily go into school and say, the Bible says this, and the Lord loves you regardless of this, and I can't implement my faith, right, which is a big part of who I am. And people try to figure out, how you did this, or how did you make it through that, and or there's a lot of whys or hows, and I can't always answer with the foundation and the cornerstone of what is, how this thing happens, right? So the music is a great way for me to be able to sneak the Lord in, and let everybody know who's really, ordering my steps. And if you're trying to figure out what the magic sauce is, that's what it is.
Right.
So I get to put it in my music.
Right.
Yeah.
You still cooking? Like, what do you said you're professionally trained in culinary.
Yeah.
Yeah. What school did you go to? And
The Art Institute of New York.
okay, how long did you stay in that field? I'm assuming you don't have time. Like you got a lot going on.
That's if Peter was a fisherman, Greg was a chef,
Okay.
and that's but my kids, they get a lot of, the food stuff as far as like my mental health. That's I
Does
spend time
cooking
cooking.
help you?
Yeah, it makes me
But at least
slows down my
relax.
day.
Yeah.
Make sure I spend time with my kids while I'm cooking, and we get to have some good family time while I'm cooking and stuff like that. So it's a good way to, keep the balance inside of that household, so that I'm not too busy
Right.
running around planning and stuff like that. So yeah,
Kids gotta eat.
kids got to eat,
Right. Kids have to eat.
right?
It's good to have a dad as a chef.
That's what they say, And now my daughter's a good cook, so
Okay.
yeah,
Passing that down.
trickling down to them now.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Speaking of your daughter, I was on your Instagram story the other day, and it seems like your daughter has picked up, one of your daughters has picked up your musical talent.
Yeah.
And she's rapping and she's got bars.
Yeah.
So how did that transpire? Did you encourage her? Did she just say on her own?
I think just watching me, just
Yeah.
being around, her mom's dad, so I'm from New York, I would say her granddad, right? She's my daughter's country, so she says her papa. So she, he's a pastor, so she was singing in church when she was younger also. So she's been around music, and she's taken piano lessons, and so yeah, it's just wonderful to see, her wanting to express herself. That's my main thing. It's like, are you able to express the thoughts that are in your head and put them somewhere, so you can kind of figure out, what you want to do with yourself, and however you want to creatively express yourself, just make sure you find that, because it's healthy to have it, right, and embrace it. So, the fact that she picked music is it's just dope,
Right.
and she writes her own lyrics, and the best thing is she's doing it for God, and
Right.
she's just, I get to hear her relationship with God, the stuff that she's trying to figure out and she don't know, and she just puts it in her lyrics and writes them down, and it's I was telling my mother the other day, it's amazing what God can do with one generation of child, because when I was coming up, my mother had me in a rap group, and she used to write my lyrics, and
Really?
they were conscious lyrics, they were good lyrics, but they weren't faith-based lyrics,
Right.
So it's a complete 180 of, seeing my daughter come up and doing it for the Lord is dope. Helps with my mental health, I'll tell you that.
Right.
Yeah.
I was actually gonna ask you about, as a man, like, with 3 daughters,
Yeah.
how important it was for you, or how you were able to, did you intentionally prioritize getting your mental health together?
Yeah.
So you, even for the benefit of your girls, because I know
Absolutely.
firsthand, unfortunately, the effects of not having like a strong male presence, or not having dad present. And my daughter has experienced similar. Do you feel like that,
Yeah.
they were an influence on you getting your
Absolutely.
mental health together?
Yeah, I wasn't always like this. I don't look like what I've been through. The Lord has dressed me up beautifully, but I have not always been the greatest. I have 3 children, two moms of beautiful children, right? So, and I'm not married, right? So I have made my mistakes, my shared mistakes that I've had to learn from, and my kids have been influential in every stage of my life of changing and elevating. There has been a lot of times where I've had to swallow my pride. There's been a lot of times where I have made the wrong moves, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I'm find myself in a beautiful place of co-parenting right now, right? Because of where we are, and my children have been the backbone to that. Besides, my spiritual health,
Mm-hmm.
um, making sure that I have a healthy relationship with them, and that they have a male figure in their life that shows them the value of them is numero uno.
Right.
Right. So, um, yeah, they changed my life. Uh, absolutely. There was
Mm-hmm.
always like, I got to do more. I got to be better, so they can have what I didn't have.
Right.
Right. All the time. But that came with a lot of growth, a lot of trial, a lot of tribulation,
Mm-hmm.
all of the men that's out there co-parenting, that gets rough, but you got to be able to, definitely swallow your pride, put your children first, and learn how to be a leader of the household. And just because you're not in the household don't mean you can't be a leader of the household. And a lot of men, we struggle with that because we're providers, we're protectors, and it's a struggle to be in the household if you're not in the household, right? And you got a co-parent.
Right.
But I tell everybody, work on your mental health, work on the relationships with the people that are going to be there forever, and figure out a way to be the best dad you could possibly be, and swallow that pride. Swallow that pride. Yeah.
That Now that's a really big one. You say you tell men swallow your pride.
Absolutely.
What do you tell men about embracing God? I hear it a little in your lyrics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's if it's I so I tell my daughters, if a man won't raise his hand for the Lord or raise his hand for God, period, he'll raise his hand to do something negative to you, right? If a man can't submit himself to something that's bigger than him, then he will never be able to submit himself to you, right?
Mhm.
So God is a big part in a man being able to lead his household, right? Because he's first relinquishing his power to somebody that's bigger than him,
Mhm.
right? And it stops you from having an egotistical moment inside of your household, stops you from being a narcissist inside of your household,
Mhm.
prideful giant inside of your household, stops you from not being able to control your lion and your lamb, right? When I say your lion and your lamb, that's your assertive side, your aggressive side, and then learning how to be a pacifist at the same time, right?
Mhm.
So God, being able to submit to something that's bigger than you is number
Right.
one. When I see that in a man, if you can't submit to something, those are probably men that I stay away from.
It's so interesting you said that because I'm at a stage in my life. The word dating as a bad word, so I gotta I'm like stuttering just to get it out right now. But one of the things that I have, like just shared and kind of wrote down and prayed about to God is that women have their lists and all that kind of
Yeah,
stuff, whatever. But for me, um, I find myself wanting to ask men, do you have who's your mentor? Like, who do you look up to? Who do you go to when you're going through something? Because just like you said, like, if you don't have a heart to understand that you do need help, that
yeah,
you need someone to pour down into you, that if you're not sure about how to make a decision, you need to be able to go to someone, talk to someone. Who are those influential men in your life, and are you that to other young men?
yeah, man. So I have a couple of people.
Hmm.
My dad was one of them. God rest his soul. My pastor, Theo Schaefer, um, is definitely somebody that I go to. Uh, our sheriff, Gary McFadden, is somebody that I go to
Right.
when things are crazy. Dr. Stephen Hancock
Hmm.
is another person that I lean on when things are getting crazy. And Pastor Brent Jones from Stonebridge Community Church is another person that I lean on. And then I got a oikos, iron sharpens iron. So
Hmm.
I keep some people around that I hate being the smartest person around,
Right.
right? No, in whatever field, right?
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
Yeah, I
It's real.
definitely have some people around that I can lean on, and I work hard to be that for, people younger than me. They would confirm that, if I'm good or not at it, but
Mm-hmm.
I make myself available, all the time. Kobe Bryant used to say the best ability is availability. So, I make myself available for these youth, and when they need me, I'm there. And hopefully they say I've done a good job.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I remember you and I talked once and you mentioned somebody else that I've interviewed, Sean Lucky Corbett,
Yeah.
being someone that kind of changed how you thought about things.
Yeah, shout out to Luck, man. It's important to have people that look like you, that are relatable,
Mm-hmm.
that are breaking barriers, that help you look at your dreams and aspirations like they're attainable,
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, Lucky is definitely one of those guys that I can lean on, I can call on. And he was definitely one of those guys that was in the front lines in 2016, 17, 18, just um, when I was protesting, I wanted to get involved. I didn't know how to get involved. Didn't really feel comfortable with like my background that I had.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm wearing slag shoes. It's really not my thing all the time. I like to be myself, dress how I want. And Lucky was on the stage with the mayor and the chief of police and city council people, and he had on Tim's and a hoodie and his hat on, and he was speaking and articulating himself amazingly. And I ran up to the stage like, yo, dude, whatever you're doing, I just want to be involved. This is what I want to do. This is what's on my heart.
Right.
And Lucky was one of them dudes that definitely gave me a navigational tool
Mm-hmm.
on how to, get implemented in the city and figure out, who's who.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
He's definitely a gem.
Yeah, shout out to Big Luck.
Yeah. He's a gem. So you found a nonprofit, right? Your nonprofit is growing. I see you and I see you doing some things. I see stuff pop up. I'm like, all right,
Yeah.
great. I think you about 4 years ago, one of the Charlotte papers, you were like one of the Charlotte Teens of the Year
Yeah.
in 2021.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That
So
was crazy.
right, and so I know that you
I'm not even from here. It's crazy.
right.
I
that
tell
part.
everybody I'm from here now.
Right.
Let's just pull my card now. I'm Charlatan, baby. I won the award.
Right, Charlatina. Well, I mean, hey, I'm Charlatina of the Year. I
That's
must be
right.
from here now.
Is that no time?
Right.
Nothing.
Right. But I'm also an executive director of a nonprofit. So we, have had conversations, sometimes silly, sometimes serious, about what it's like to navigate this nonprofit space.
Yeah.
That was a shift for you to enter into this space because you had a rap career, you were a sous chef.
Yeah.
Now, we talk about, how we out here trying to raise this money
It's a
and
lot.
grants.
It's a lot.
And you're doing big things because you run those numbers down to me about the hotels and what it costs to lease them, and we're not talking a small amount of change.
No.
Where do you feel like where did you get at the acumen to do that? Did it come natural to you? Did you take a course to kind of get yourself up to speed of what it meant to run a nonprofit?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I took a lot of courses, whether they were on purpose or by accident.
Right.
I took a lot of life lessons, and I did do an MBA program at Wake Forest for innovation and new design
Mm-hmm.
and entrepreneurship. I've done nonprofit, 101 at Duke University.
Mhm.
So I've always made sure that I took advantage of any classes, and so I can learn about the environment, and so yeah, a lot of life lessons, organizational lessons. Um, it's something to navigate this world. Coming into it, you would think that this is the daisies and roses and host a nonprofit side.
Right.
It's all servant leaders.
Right.
Especially being from the streets. My mentality was I've dealt with some sharks in the
Mhm.
streets, right? There's no way in the world that this is going to be, Sharky on this side,
And then
right?
you get over this side.
And then you
like,
get on this side and you see that I understand why there are issues in the world, right? And I understand why we're not making an impact the way that we should be making an impact as a nonprofit sector, because there are too many rules and regulations and legalities to this thing of how we fundraise, how we serve, how we pour love into the community, who we serve, how we serve them, when we serve them. All of that confuses, servant leadership, right? And makes it very hard to do it with 100% heart, right? I have definitely the scripture, be as humble as a dove and as sly as a serpent, applies to this world right here of nonprofit. So much.
Yeah.
You have to learn how to really be that, and navigate inside of this place, because not everybody's bottom line is impact. And that's what you want everyone's bottom line to be. Did we make impact? And sometimes it's more return. And you have to learn how to talk about a return for people. And what does that look like? And what does a return look like when you talk about a person's value?
Right.
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 And it's hard to do. It's hard to put those into numbers.
Yeah. I was just going to say the data.
The data.
Everything is driven by the data.
Yeah, the hours you serve, the minutes that you serve with people's family. How do you put that into a dollar amount?
Right.
Right. It's hard to do that, especially with your leading. If you have a servant's heart, right, it's hard to do that. So, this space is I wish I had a course before I went in it. I'm glad that I'm in it. That God's been good through it, and I know why I'm in it. It's to elevate it. It's to make sure that there is some elevation to this nonprofit sector. That there is some ownership, some equity. Grassroots organizations can have their own buildings and own centers, right? And they can control what's happening in these communities. And instead of complaining about gentrification, we're starting it, right? And we're doing gentrification and we're taking care of our families. So that's why I'm here now. I see that it can't be the same thing that has existed for the last 75 to 100 years, right? Where we're just program serving people and programming people to go back into a society that's going to program them again, right?
Yeah.
We have to figure out a different way of doing this nonprofit world. So that's why I'm here.
You're here to disrupt,
good trouble, innovate.
Yeah.
I don't want to say disrupt. Let's say innovate.
Well, I think, when people say, well, I come to disrupt, it's not a bad thing anymore. People, take it as a bad thing, but I think it's a synonym for innovate.
Yeah, well, funders like innovate. So say disrupt to a funder.
I have heard disrupting your mission statement. Grant,
let's give you that
denied.
$10,000 disrupt money. Don't give him no $1 million. He wants to disrupt.
Right. But that's basically what you're talking about. But you are talking about innovating and disrupting, and maybe they're one and the same, maybe they're not, maybe there's a little bit of a difference to it. But we've talked about grant processes, and one of the things that I still think about when you tell me a story, I'm not going to mention any names here, but
we're not going viral,
right? We're not, but about how you have sent grants back and just say, and I think that, and I say this. I'm gonna look at my camera because I say this in all love, right? Because I've been doing this for 25 years plus. It is, when you talked about return, right? We have to decide, right? As executive directors, we have to decide if that $25,000 grant, which sounds like a lot of money to people who don't have, or haven't had that kind of money, right, in one time.
Right.
But if we get a $25,000 grant, but there's, a monthly report, and you have to have like 18 data points in each report, and the reports take you 3 and
The
4
25
hours.
grand is gone in 2 payrolls.
Right.
It's gone.
Right. And so we spend so much time having to administrate grants. And so this is not any shade to grant makers and funders out there, because they work hard for their money. They're fundraising to get that money
Yeah, yeah.
oftentimes, and their rules are their rules. But I do appreciate when funders realize that every hour that I've got to be doing, or one of my staff has to be doing, creating these reports, is an hour that we don't get to be either trying to raise more money to make more impact, or not doing direct service
Right.
because we're, you know, so we invest a lot in data because we do realize how important it is, and data does help inform decisions and helps us make good decisions. But yeah, sometimes the money can be tedious, right? To just
Yeah, it's
like we know we got to do a report. We owe it to our funders. It's better say this is how we spent your money.
we don't
So
mind doing
we're not
reports.
saying that,
Right. We don't mind doing
right.
reports.
But when it gets to a point where it takes away from our time to be able to really spend making the impact,
Yeah.
I think that's when it can get a little troublesome. So I am interpreting what you say in terms of disrupt slash innovate. Not that we are trying to completely recreate the system, but improve it.
Improve it. We just want a little more respect. Respect my business acumen.
Yeah.
Respect the
I'm going to
impact.
talk about your business acumen. Where do you think it came from? Because you have a very I'm impressed.
Oh, let's get into this.
Yeah, I'm impressed when I hear you talk about the numbers. Like, you run them numbers down to me. You're like, hey, let's go to half on a hotel, and I'm like, how much that gonna cost? You're like, well, you started running those numbers down. I said, I'm gonna get back to you. So I was like, whoa, yeah. Where's that business acumen? It seems ingrained in you.
Yeah. Shout out to my grandfather, who was the first social entrepreneur that I've ever seen in my life. When I was living in Baltimore, he used to wake me up at like 7 in the morning, right? And I would have to go with him to the flea market. We would set up the flea market. I would have to watch him do his thing. I'll help him with some of the baseball cards, basketball cards, set up some of that stuff, help sell them, right? And then he had this fruit stand in Baltimore, and I would watch people like walk past a supermarket and go to my grandfather's fruit stand, right? And they would sit there and have conversations with him all day and buy fruit from him. He had some of the best fruit in the city. Leonard Bailey, Akram Ukda is, he is God rest his soul. And he was probably the first social entrepreneur I seen. And then my dad was a hustler in the streets, right? And he was like the biggest hustler on my block. I promise you. My house was like this all the time. And but I watched him, right? He knew everybody in the community. It was nobody he didn't know. People leaned on him. He gave out loans. He did like all of his stuff, but it was just from a negative perspective inside of the neighborhood. But it was still, applicable. I could still put that into what I was doing. And then my grandmother in the Bronx, she was the super, like the landlord of the building. So
wow.
There was nobody that my grandmother didn't knew. It took her 35 minutes to go and get a coffee from the store and a butter roll.
Everybody stopped.
Because everybody stopped. It was like, yo, grandma, I'll just go to the store for you.
Chips, right?
I'm just trying to get the 50-cent donut sticks. But yeah, it's those were probably like the first ones I seen. My Uncle Omar owned a barbershop on my block. So that was.
So it's in your blood.
It's in my blood. Entrepreneur.
Right. You needed nonprofit to pull it out.
I did. I needed that. I was always trying to do some entrepreneurial type work in some type of way that just wasn't landing. Food truck here. I find myself in some type of like Ponzi scheme business, trying to do something.
Not the Ponzi scheme.
Yeah, don't want to say nobody's name. Doing DoorDox and stuff, and always trying to do something. And I think in nonprofit it hit because I wasn't trying to serve my own, my own need or passion. It was all outside of everything I was doing. But yeah, my grandfather, my father, my grandmother, and then, I mean, of course, my mom was just, that's where I get my fight from.
Yeah,
Yeah, for sure.
sure. Wow. I really enjoyed our conversation. I think that people are going to get a lot of value out of the things that we've discussed. And I really hope that, especially the men that watch this, can really learn and just kind of understand like where you start does not need to be where you
Yeah,
end, right?
yeah,
You can go from hustling on the street, like you said, you spent a year locked up.
yeah.
Um, Dive into, your gifts. You have a gift of cooking, but allow God to lead you, right, and guide your path. And our paths aren't straight. They're very crooked for a reason.
Mhm.
Um, but I think as long as that we hear that voice that's guiding us,
Yeah.
and it sounds like God has guided you right into your purpose, but all those things help stack up and make you the man that you are today. So I appreciate you coming. It's a
Yeah.
strong
Thank
place.
you.
We had a great conversation. I know we'll have many more. I'll be sitting with my notepad at your feet, just learning about the housing game from you. So I really do appreciate that. Tell the audience where they can find out more about Heal Charlotte.
Greg H. Jackson on everything, all social media platforms. Make sure you find me there on YouTube. Greg H. Jackson, Something God Loves TV. Find my album, Something God Loves, on Apple, Spotify, all streaming platforms. Like the buttons, hit the notifications, subscribe, all of that, stuff that y'all are supposed to do when you get on a YouTube channel. And thank you for having me. This was absolutely amazing. I appreciate you. And I pray that everything works out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for taking the time to come and talk with me on Strong Place. And thank you for joining us for another episode of Strong Place. I'm Aya Johnson, Executive Director, Mental Health America, Central Carolinas. Please don't forget to like this episode, share it with a friend, help somebody lean into their mental health, and turn on that notification bell so you'll know when our next episode is dropping. Until next time, take care.